The Chicago rain came down in sheets that November night, turning the warehouse district near South Ashland Avenue into a maze of shadows and reflections. Lily Chen clutched her worn messenger bag tighter as she hurried through the alley, regretting her decision to take the shortcut home from the Harold Washington Library. The 26-year-old had always been cautious, invisible even, blending into crowds like a ghost. She preferred it that way. After years of moving through life unnoticed, anonymity had become her comfort zone, her shield against a world that demanded too much. But tonight, invisibility would fail her in the most spectacular way possible. The sound hit her first, sharp cracks that echoed off brick walls, unmistakable even through the rain. Gunfire. Lily froze mid-step, her heart hammering against her ribs. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear into the darkness like she always did. Instead, her curiosity betrayed her survival instinct. She pressed herself against the cold, wet wall and peered around the corner of the abandoned manufacturing building. 5 men surrounded a black SUV, their weapons trained on the vehicle with military precision. The driver slumped forward over the steering wheel, clearly hit, blood spreading across the cracked windshield. In the back seat, a figure moved. A man in an expensive tailored suit, blood spreading across his white shirt like crimson ink on paper. He was trapped, wounded, and running out of time. The gunmen moved with coordinated efficiency, tightening their circle, prepared to finish what they started. Lily's breath caught in her throat. She recognized him from the news. Dominic Russo, the powerful businessman the media whispered was really a Mafia boss controlling territories across Chicago's west side. His dark eyes, even through pain, scanned his surroundings with predatory awareness. Then those eyes met hers for a split second through the shattered window, and something unspoken passed between them. Not quite resignation, not quite acceptance of death. Something more complex, acknowledgement that this was how his world worked, how it always ended. She should have walked away. Any rational person would have dialed 911 and disappeared into the night. But Lily Chen had spent her entire life being invisible, being quiet, being safe, being the good girl who followed rules and never made waves. And in that moment, watching a man prepare to die while 5 killers closed in, she realized she was tired of it. Tired of hiding, tired of being afraid, tired of living half a life. Her eyes scanned the alley frantically, her mind shifting into the analytical mode her father had drilled into her during those endless tactical training sessions she had resented. Construction materials leaned against the warehouse wall, a stack of metal pipes, probably left over from renovation work, old paint cans, broken wooden pallets, random debris. Her brain calculated angles and distances with the same precision she used to organize library catalogs, assessing each item as a potential weapon or distraction. The gunmen were focused entirely on their target, confident in their numbers, probably already planning their exit strategy. That confidence was their first mistake. They had not accounted for witnesses, had not posted a lookout, had assumed the late hour and rain would keep civilians away from this industrial area. Lily set down her messenger bag carefully, her hands surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. She grabbed the heaviest pipe she could lift, about 3 feet long, solid steel, cold and wet from the rain. Then she moved with surprising silence, her body remembering the footwork her Marine father had insisted she practice every weekend for years. Heel to toe, weight distributed, breath controlled. She had hated every minute of those training sessions, preferring books to combat techniques. Now she silently thanked him. She approached the nearest gunman from behind, her heart pounding so loud she was certain everyone could hear it. He wore a leather jacket, his attention focused on Dominic in the SUV, his finger ready on the trigger. Lily raised the pipe, aimed for the back of his knee like her father taught her, disable but do not kill, and swung hard with all her strength. The pipe connected with a sickening crack. The gunman howled in pain and dropped to the wet pavement, his weapon clattering away. His scream shattered the focused violence of the ambush. Chaos erupted in the alley like a bomb, detonating. The second gunman spun toward her, shock evident even in the darkness, clearly not expecting a small Asian woman in a library cardigan to be his problem. But Lily had already grabbed the fallen man's weapon before conscious thought caught up with instinct. The gun felt heavy and foreign in her hands, cold metal against her palms, but her fingers found the grip naturally from those awful shooting range sessions her father had forced her to endure. She did not think, she just moved, raising the weapon with shaking hands. The shot went wide, the recoil nearly knocking the weapon from her grip. But the muzzle flash and sound were enough to make the remaining gunmen scatter for cover behind cars and dumpsters. They had expected an execution. They had not expected resistance, especially not from a civilian who appeared out of nowhere. 3 more to go, and Lily had absolutely no plan for what came next. Inside the SUV, Dominic Russo watched through the blood-streaked window, utterly stunned. Pain pulsed through his shoulder where the bullet had entered, but shock momentarily overrode physical sensation. This small woman in a rain-soaked coat and glasses was taking on his executioners with nothing but improvisation and raw courage. No backup, no plan, just action. He had survived in Chicago's brutal underworld for 15 years, had seen every kind of violence, every kind of desperation, but he had never seen anything quite like this. He forced himself upright despite the bullet in his shoulder, his vision swimming slightly from blood loss. His hand found his own weapon in the shoulder holster. If this crazy, brave woman was going to fight for him, the least he could do was fight alongside her. He kicked open the damaged door with his good shoulder, the metal groaning in protest, and prepared to even the odds. The rain continued falling, washing blood into the gutters, turning the alley into a battleground where the rules of ordinary life no longer applied. The rain intensified as Lily dove behind a rusted dumpster, bullets sparking off metal above her head with sounds like angry hornets. Her hands shook violently now that the initial adrenaline was fading, replaced by the terrifying reality of what she was doing. This was insane. She was a librarian who spent her days helping people find books and managing the quiet order of the Dewey Decimal System. She was not an action hero. She was not trained for urban warfare. She was just someone who had made an impulsive decision and now had to survive the consequences. Yet somehow her body kept moving, kept reacting. Muscle memory from training she thought she had forgotten taking over when conscious thought failed. One of the remaining gunmen advanced cautiously, calling out to his companions in rapid Italian. Lily caught fragments. Her father had insisted she learn multiple languages, claiming it might save her life someday. The man was giving orders to flank her position, to finish this quickly before police arrived. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, but they sounded far away, too far to matter in the next 60 seconds. She gripped the stolen weapon tighter, her mind racing through increasingly desperate options. The construction materials scattered around the alley were still her only real advantage. These men had training, probably military backgrounds, definitely more experience with violence than she would ever want. But they were also following predictable patterns, moving with tactical precision that made them methodical rather than creative. Her eyes landed on a bucket of nails near the dumpster, probably left by workers who had been repairing the warehouse exterior. In one fluid motion born of desperation rather than planning, she grabbed it and hurled the entire contents across the alley floor between the approaching gunman and her position. Thousands of nails scattered like metallic rain, creating a makeshift barrier. The effect was immediate and almost comical. 2 men stepped directly onto the scattered nails, the sharp points punching through their shoes. They cursed loudly in Italian, stumbling backwards, their formation breaking apart as pain disrupted their coordinated advance. It was not elegant, but it bought precious seconds. Inside the damaged SUV, Dominic Russo kicked open the door with his good shoulder, the metal groaning in protest. Pain radiated through his entire upper body, but years of surviving in Chicago's underworld had taught him to function through agony that would incapacitate normal people. He had been shot before, stabbed, beaten. He knew how to compartmentalize, how to keep moving when his body screamed to stop. He raised his weapon with practiced precision and took aim at the closest threat, one of the men still trying to advance on the woman's position despite the nails. 2 shots, center mass, exactly as he had been taught decades ago. The man dropped without a sound, and suddenly the odds were slightly better. Lily flinched at the sound of Dominic's weapon, even though logically she knew he was helping. The violence was too real, too close, too different from action movies where deaths felt abstract. These were real people dying in front of her, and even though they had been trying to kill both her and Dominic, the weight of it pressed against her chest like a physical force. But she could not afford to process that now. Survival first, moral crisis later. She spotted a paint can near the dumpster, one of those industrial 5-gallon containers, still half full, based on the weight when she grabbed it. The 4th gunman was repositioning, trying to get an angle on Dominic while he was exposed outside the SUV. Lily stood, aimed, and threw the paint can with every ounce of strength in her body. The container flew through the rain-streaked air in a clumsy arc, spinning end over end. For a moment she thought she had miscalculated completely. Then it connected with the 4th gunman's head with a sickening thud, paint exploding across his face and chest in a burst of off-white latex. He collapsed like a puppet with cut strings, unconscious before he hit the ground. 1 assassin left. The odds had shifted dramatically. The final gunman realized his situation had deteriorated from easy execution to desperate survival. He raised his weapon toward Lily, finger tightening on the trigger, his face a mask of professional focus. Time seemed to slow in that horrible way it does when death approaches. She saw the barrel pointed at her chest, saw his intention written clearly in his body language, knew with absolute certainty she would not make it back to cover. Her legs felt like lead. The stolen weapon was pointed the wrong direction. Physics and timing were against her. This was how her impulsive decision to help a stranger ended, in a dirty Chicago alley, shot by a professional killer whose name she would never know. Then Dominic appeared behind the man like a wounded predator, emerging from shadows, moving with speed that seemed impossible for someone who had been shot minutes ago. He struck the assassin's weapon arm down hard, and they grappled. Despite his injury, despite the blood soaking his expensive suit, the Mafia boss fought with practiced brutality, born from decades navigating Chicago's violent underworld. Within seconds that felt like hours, his hands found the man's throat, applied pressure to specific points, and the threat was neutralized, unconscious rather than dead, which surprised Lily. Silence fell over the alley, broken only by the steady drumming of rain and their heavy breathing creating clouds in the cold November air. Dominic turned slowly to face his savior, his dark suit jacket hanging open, blood spreading across the white shirt beneath, rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead. He looked like violence personified, like every news story ever written about him. Yet his eyes held something unexpected, calculation mixed with genuine curiosity and perhaps the beginning of respect. Lily stood beside the dumpster, soaked and shaking, still holding the empty paint can in one hand like a weapon she had forgotten to put down. Their eyes met properly for the first time without gunfire between them. His were dark, intelligent, filled with questions, and that predatory assessment she imagined he turned on everyone. Hers were wide with shock, adrenaline, and complete disbelief at her own actions. "Who the hell are you?" Dominic asked, his voice rougher than he intended, pain and blood loss adding an edge to the question. Before Lily could answer, before she could even begin to process what had just happened, he took a step forward. Instinct made her take one back, pressing against the dumpster. She had just helped him. But she also knew exactly who and what Dominic Russo represented in this city, and survival instinct finally kicked in properly. Dominic raised his uninjured hand slowly, palm out in a gesture of peace that looked strange coming from a man covered in blood, standing among unconscious and dead bodies. "Easy," he said, fighting to keep his voice steady despite the pain radiating through his shoulder. "You just saved my life. I am not going to hurt you." His tone was measured, the kind of voice used to calm frightened animals, though something in his expression suggested he was not entirely sure how to handle this situation either. Lily's voice came out steadier than she felt, surprising even herself. "You are Dominic Russo. The entire city knows who you are, what you are." She gestured vaguely at the carnage around them, her hand still shaking. "And I just involved myself in whatever this is. So forgive me if I am not entirely convinced about the not hurting me part." His lips curved into something that might have been a smile under different circumstances, though pain made it more of a grimace. "And yet, you helped me anyway. Why? Most people would have run, should have run, but you picked up a pipe and attacked 5 armed men. That is either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and I'm trying to figure out which." She did not have a good answer, not one that made sense even to herself. "Because it was the right thing to do," she managed finally, knowing how inadequate it sounded. "Because someone was dying and I could help. Because I am tired of being invisible. Take your pick. None of them are particularly satisfying reasons for nearly getting killed." Sirens wailed closer now. Multiple vehicles definitely responding to gunfire reports. Dominic's expression shifted immediately from curiosity to calculation, his mind clearly running through contingencies and escape routes. He pulled out his phone with his good hand, blood smearing across the screen, and sent a rapid text message. Within what felt like seconds but was probably closer to a minute, 2 black cars screeched into the alley from opposite ends, boxing in the scene. Men in suits emerged from both vehicles, weapons drawn, scanning for threats with coordinated efficiency that spoke of military or paramilitary training. When they saw their boss standing, bloodied but alive, visible relief flashed across their faces before professional masks fell back into place. Then they noticed Lily, and those weapons turned slightly in her direction, questioning. "She is with me," Dominic said firmly, his voice carrying absolute authority despite his injury. "No one touches her. No one questions her. She just saved my life, which means she is under my protection until I say otherwise. Is that understood?" A chorus of yes, Boss answered him. His second in command, a man Lily would later learn was named Marco, approached quickly. "Boss, you need a hospital. That wound needs proper treatment." "No hospitals," Dominic replied immediately, shaking his head. "Hospitals mean questions, police reports, investigations. Take me to the safe house on North Burling Street, and bring her." He pointed at Lily without looking away from Marco. "Wait," Lily interjected, finding her voice and her spine simultaneously. "I'm not going anywhere with you people. I helped because someone needed help. That is it. That is where this ends. Now I'm going home, and we can all pretend this never happened." Dominic moved closer despite his injury, and even wounded. His presence was commanding, in a way Lily had only read about in books. Physical charisma mixed with barely contained danger. "Those men were Castellano soldiers," he said quietly, gesturing at the bodies and unconscious attackers. "They saw your face clearly. You think they will forget the woman who killed 2 of their people and helped me escape?" The blood drained from Lily's face as the implications crashed over her like the cold rain still falling. "I did not kill anyone," she protested weakly. I was just... "You interfered in a Mafia execution," Dominic continued, his tone not unkind but brutally honest in a way that cut through any comfortable delusions she might want to maintain. "You picked a side whether you meant to or not. That makes you a witness, a participant, and a target. The Castellanos will put word out on every street corner they control, which is a lot of this city. Someone saw you. Someone always sees. And whether you like it or not, your quiet life just ended the moment you picked up that pipe. I am sorry, but that is the reality we are both dealing with now. The rain continued falling, colder now, or perhaps that was shock setting in. Lily looked at the bodies scattered around the alley, at the weapons, at the dangerous men in expensive suits surrounding her like a human barrier, then back at Dominic Rousseau, the man whose life she had saved, and who was now telling her that everything had changed, that her comfortable, invisible existence had shattered in a few minutes of impulsive violence. His eyes held something unexpected. Respect, certainly, but also what looked like genuine guilt, as though he understood he was dragging her into a world she never wanted to know existed outside news reports. "Come with us," he said more quietly, almost gently. "Let me protect you while my people handle this situation. It is the least I can do. You saved my life tonight. Let me return the favor by keeping you alive long enough to have a life to return to." Sirens were getting very close now, probably less than a minute away. The men in suits were getting nervous, looking to Marco and Dominic for direction. A decision had to be made, immediately. Lily looked down at her hands, still shaking, paint and rain and possibly blood splattered across her cardigan. She thought about her small apartment in Rogers Park, her predictable routine, her safe, boring job, and she realized Dominic was right. The moment she stepped around that corner, the moment she chose to act instead of hide, everything changed. There was no going back to invisible now. "Fine," she said quietly, "but this is temporary, just until whatever this is gets resolved." Dominic nodded, then gestured to his men. They moved immediately, two of them supporting him toward one of the vehicles, others already cleaning up evidence with disturbing efficiency, like they had done this many times before. Marco gently guided Lily toward the second car, careful not to touch her, treating her like something fragile and dangerous simultaneously. As she slid into the leather-back seat, Lily caught one last glimpse of the alley where her life had divided into before and after. Then the door closed, the car accelerated smoothly, and Chicago's nighttime streets blurred past rain-streaked windows as she dove deeper into a world she had only ever glimpsed in headlines. The safe house was a converted brownstone in Lincoln Park, elegant on the outside, with its historic brick facade and wrought iron details, fortified like a military bunker within. Lily sat on an expensive leather sofa in what appeared to be a living room, decorated with understated luxury. Original artwork on walls, hardwood floors that probably cost more than her annual salary, furniture that whispered old money and careful taste. She was wrapped in a borrowed blanket that was softer than anything she owned, watching as a private doctor stitched Dominic's shoulder with practiced efficiency that spoke of frequent house calls for injuries that could not involve hospitals or police reports. Dominic never flinched during the procedure, never looked away from her, his dark eyes studying her face like she was a puzzle he needed to solve. She wondered what he saw, a terrified librarian way out of her depth or something else. She wondered what she saw when she looked at him, a criminal who ran illegal operations across Chicago, or the man who had chosen to disable rather than kill that last attacker. Showing restraint in a moment when killing would have been easier and safer. Marco hovered nearby, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating responses to the attack with rapid-fire Italian that Lily's language training allowed her to partially follow. Other men moved through the brownstone with military precision, checking security feeds displayed on monitors in an adjacent room, reinforcing entry points, establishing defensive positions. This was a world operating by rules she did not understand, a parallel society existing beneath the surface of normal Chicago life. The doctor finished his work and packed his supplies into a leather medical bag that looked like it cost more than her car. Rest for at least 48 hours, no heavy lifting for 2 weeks minimum. He changed the dressing daily, and take the full course of antibiotics. I am leaving," he instructed, in a tone that suggested he had given these instructions many times before. "The bullet went through cleanly, missed major vessels, but infection is still your biggest risk now." Dominic nodded acknowledgement, but was already rolling his shoulder experimentally, testing range of motion, clearly calculating how soon he could return to full function. He reached for a bottle of expensive whiskey on the side table, poured himself 2 fingers with his good hand, then offered a glass to Lily. She shook her head, not trusting alcohol on top of adrenaline crash and shock. "I need you to tell me about yourself," he said without preamble, settling carefully into the leather chair across from her, his freshly bandaged shoulder visible through the clean shirt someone had found for him. "Everything. Where you learned to fight like that, how you stayed so calm under fire, why someone like you was walking through that particular alley at 10 at night. Because none of this adds up to quiet librarian out for an evening stroll." Lily met his gaze evenly, finding some reserve of composure she did not know she possessed. "I am no one special. I work at the Harold Washington Library in the Reader Services Department. I was working late on inventory because we have a collection audit next week. I took a shortcut through that area because my usual route was blocked by construction and I was tired and it was raining." That is literally the entire story. Wrong place, wrong time, terrible decision-making. "That is not an entire story," Dominic countered, his tone patient but persistent. "That is a resume, a sequence of events. People do not fight the way you fought without serious training. You assessed threats instantly, used your environment tactically, adapted to changing circumstances. That is not luck or instinct, that is practice, probably years of it. So try again, and this time tell me the real story." She was quiet for a long moment, struggling with how much to reveal to this dangerous stranger who also happened to be the reason she was currently sitting in a fortified brownstone instead of her apartment. "My father was a Marine," she said finally, her voice carrying old grief. "Force recon. After my mother died when I was 12, he became paranoid about my safety, made me take martial arts 5 days a week. Tactical awareness classes, firearms training, hand-to-hand combat, survival skills. I hated every minute of it. I just wanted to read books and be a normal teenager. We fought about it constantly. And yet when it mattered tonight, you remembered everything he taught you," Dominic observed quietly. "He would be proud." Lily's eyes glistened, though she refused to let tears fall. "He died 3 years ago. Stage 4 lung cancer, never smoked a day in his life, just bad genetics and worse luck. I have been alone since then. I moved to Chicago specifically to start over, to be someone different. I wanted peace and quiet and a boring, predictable life. I wanted to be invisible." She laughed bitterly. "That plan clearly worked out great." Dominic's expression softened in a way that seemed unpracticed, like empathy was not an emotion he accessed frequently. "Instead, you got involved with me. I am sorry. That was never supposed to happen. You were never supposed to be part of any of this." Marco approached before she could respond, interrupting the surprisingly intimate moment. "Boss, we have a developing problem. The Castellanos know someone helped you survive. They are already putting word out on the street, offering significant money for information about a Chinese woman, mid-20s, seen at the ambush site. They have descriptions from at least 2 sources who were in the area." Lily's stomach dropped, the temporary safety of the brownstone suddenly feeling very fragile. This is really happening. They are actually hunting me for helping someone. The unfairness of it crashed over her like a wave. "Yes," Dominic said simply, his voice carrying the weight of someone delivering a terminal diagnosis. "And it means you cannot go back to your apartment, your job, your routine, or any part of your normal life until this situation is resolved one way or another. I have people working on it, but these things take time. Negotiations, pressure, leverage. The Castellanos are powerful, and they are very angry right now." "How long?" Lily asked, though she was not sure she wanted to know the answer. Days at minimum, Dominic replied honestly, possibly weeks. It depends on many factors, most of which are outside my direct control. I will do everything in my power to resolve this quickly, but I will not lie to you about timeframes or risks. You deserve honesty after what you did for me tonight. Lily pulled the blanket tighter around herself, suddenly exhausted beyond anything she had ever experienced. So I am a prisoner here. You are a guest under protection, Dominic corrected gently. There is a difference, even if the practical result looks similar. You can move freely within this building. Anything you need, just ask. But going outside right now would be suicide, and I did not survive tonight just to watch you get killed by my enemies. The weight of her new reality settled over her like the expensive blanket, suffocating despite its softness.